adds a port mapping for each IP, internal IP. Let's say if I want to scan port 21 of all the hosts on the inside of the LAN, it starts adding port mappings for 10.0.0.1 and 21, and then tries to map it to an external port. And then the program tries to check if that port is open in the external port on the one IP. If it's open, obviously you can establish the connection for the internal host and the internal services. And also, it does the deletion of the port mapping. So what are the cons with UPnP mapping? A lot. First of all, the PnP stacks are buggy and unstable. It was kind of hard, or not that hard, programming UMAP. It's the one being distributed on the CDs it's very buggy, so I would suggest just downloading the new version when I release it tonight on the site. But basically, UPnP stacks, even though they're supposed to be in a standard, they don't behave on the standard, and they have minor differences. The other thing is that obviously we have limited bandwidth because we're relying on the upload bandwidth of the devices. And also, we have problems with protocols that have a heavy amount of connections. I mean, we can use UPnP mapping for maybe mapping ports for SSH, maybe some web requests. But if you get something like torrent or whatever, obviously it won't work that well. I mean, if we have only a limit of 150 or 200 mappings at a time, it's just not going to work. And the other thing is that some devices, even though they report that they open the port, they don't. They say everything's okay, 200 okay, and everything in the reply. But when you go and try to connect to the port, you have nothing. So that's obviously not very good. So let's do a little demo on UMAP, and let's go for the proxy mode. Let's see if I can get this to work. I had to modify UMAP so that the real IPs don't show, because I don't want my ass thrown in jail and raped. So when you get the real version, though, you can have all the fun you want. It shouldn't matter. In fact, there's also an issue on if this is. It's obviously maybe it could be illegal, but not that much, because it's the same idea of an open proxy. It's just someone that has a badly configured device on the net that's allowing people to forward traffic. Obviously, you're not authorized for doing port mappings, but it's not actually breaking into the device. So maybe I won't get my ass thrown in jail. So here we go. I'm just going to scan a standard IP block, and it should start running right away. I don't know if you can see it back there. Can you? All right. So on the right hand here, we have the positive IPs. And as you can see here, we have a lot of details that come out from the device. First of all, we can get the serial number from the device, the model number, who makes it, and the MAC address of the device. This obviously would help also for those devices that come with WEP keys tied to the serial number and all that, so that's not good either. So not only that, we also have a group of commands that we can execute on any device. And let me remind you that we are scanning a random block somewhere, and it's not, I mean, we're not doing any tricks. So here are the commands that we can execute. There are not a lot of interesting commands, well, maybe or maybe not. So we have the first part that's not on bold, and those are the commands that are actually advertised by the device. Now, the ones that are on the bottom are the ones that are not advertised by the device. Obviously, we wanted to try just in case. I said we hacker would do, and it works. I mean, even if the device doesn't advertise this command, you can still execute the command. So, for example, if I want to check out what's the upload and download bandwidth for this device, I could just execute, and here we go. We get that this device is running a upstream of 350 something and a downstream of 2 megs, which is pretty convenient if you want to use for a SOX proxy and you want to know what kind of bandwidth or latency you're being using. And we also have other commands like forced termination. I assure you, forced termination is not for a contract or anything. It will actually close down the device and close out the connection. So I don't think denial of service is even a big deal, because if you have a command that actually turns off the device, what's the point? I mean, we don't need denial of service. We just have to turn it off. So we also have other commands like add port mapping, which is basically what UMAP uses for connections. And we also have these other commands like get username and get password, and they actually work. Now, on the bright side, those the username and the password they're talking about is not the administration interface, but the PPP authentication username and password. Now, this is maybe not that bad for some guys, because, I mean, there's not much you can do with it. But unfortunately, some providers use the customer number as a username for the PPP device. So that would also do something that you don't want to, and get you some information that you shouldn't have. Let me hit another command. Let's see if the username works. There you go. That's a username for the PPP of that device, which is also very weird. So onto the more important stuff. Let's go for what I've set up. Is this UMAP is actually scanning, and it opens up a SOX port, and you can send a request, and it will map it through to that IP that I have selected. We can test it right here. I've set up a page to show this mapping. Let's see if it works. Remember that UPnP usually is very buggy and unreliable. And there it goes. It works. Now we have a very disturbing image of Bill Gates over there. But as you can see, we have the IP over there. You can test that URL out if you want to, and you can see that it'll point out the IP you're working at. If you can see in UMAP, this is the IP we have selected. Now, if I want to just use another device, like the one below, 244.6, then it should work too. Let's see. There we go. In fact, we can go on Google. I'll show you. You should go to the Google for the Dominican Republic, as this is a device for the Dominican Republic. Now, as you probably suspect, this is pretty bad. I mean, we have devices like this going on in the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Thailand, a lot of countries, and a lot of devices are going on like that. We also have another functionality of the UMAP, which is scanning for internal hosts. Now, I don't want to do live scanning of the host, because most hosts nowadays are using other gateway devices like Linksys wireless routers and all that, which block all the WAN requests. But if there are devices that have direct connections to other devices or PCs, then we could actually map. Let me show you a couple of mappings I did earlier on. Now, don't laugh at my lead smudging skills from GIMP. So basically, what I want to show you here is UMAP, and this number up here on the total positives. This scan was running for a couple of days, and we got 88,000 devices with open UPnP ports, which is ridiculous. And this is actually a port mapping. As you can see, the smart part is the external IP address in the external port, and we have the internal IP address which the mapping has been made for. We also have another example of, in this case, for example, I just set it to run for that IP, and we got Windows IP 10.0.0.5, port 139 and 445. Now, this is maybe a bigger problem because obviously you can traverse the NAT from the one, which is something you don't want. And we have all the possibilities. Now, we can't use this sometimes on some protocols, let's say, because we have to map these ports for on some of the higher ports. We can't use the same 139 or the 445. So that could make things a little bit more difficult, but it still works. And obviously, if you have an SSH port or an HTTP port, it won't matter that much. Let's keep on working here. So that's the internal LAN scanning tool. And how do we fix this? I don't know. There's no real solution or the best solution. First of all, we need to get everyone to be aware of this and start configuring their devices for UPnP, only accepting the actions from the LAN side. Now, unfortunately, some devices, even if after you configure them to accept the actions from the LAN side, they just don't work. I mean, you can configure them and they will keep on working on the one side, which is pretty bad too. We also could work with ISPs, which could do some base configuration to disable by default the UPnP 1 request. Now, this is a big problem because most ISPs just say, that's not my problem. That's a customer's problem. I don't want to, you know, it's an industry problem, which is, yeah, deplorable. And on some cases, if you don't have any other choice, you could just disable UPnP all the way, which is not good. I don't know if you guys have used UPnP that much, but I'm a gamer, and you can't play with PlayStation and Xbox without UPnP, unless you have some kind of DMC or an external IP address pointing directly at your device. So mitigation is going to be a little difficult, but most people can just configure their devices so that they can block the request from the one. As Dan Kaminsky was saying at the previous talk, it's like having a firewall asking people if they want to block or unblock, which is kind of weird because, I mean, why should you ask? Obviously, if you configured, you shouldn't be asking. And that's about it. I have any questions or? I'm sorry? Thank you.